Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 17th of June, 2021. Alright, everyone, let's get into it. So, Gitcoin Grants Round 10 is officially live, started yesterday, June 16th, will run till July 1st, 2021, and July 7th for the hackathon. Now, there's $650,000 of matching funds in this round, with $350,000 worth of prizes for hackers, and this is just the easiest and best way to fund your favorite teams. I'm sure all of you are already familiar with Gitcoin Grants and how that all works. You donate to your favorite open source team, and they get matching out of this funding pool here, quadratic matching. And for those who don't know how quadratic matching works, it means that your donations can be matched by up to something like 200x, and it's based on individual donations rather than big whale donations or things like that. So it's basically a way to make the donation process a bit more egalitarian and a bit more even across the board here. So if you want to go fund a bunch of different teams, you can go through the different categories here. Check out which teams you want to fund, put them into your cart, and do that. There's also a layer 2 integration with ZK Sync, so you won't have to pay layer 1 fees. Like even at 20 Gwei, the layer 1 fees for donating, are still quite high. So definitely check out the ZK Sync integration. And generally, you can also check out the collections here too. So people have put together collections where it's basically a whole collection of grants that they've curated, and they said, okay, well, we think they think this is worth funding. I've got a grant here. I don't know if I keep scrolling, it might pop up, but it's called Sassel's Cart of Love. You can just Google that, you'll be able to find it. But essentially, it's just got I think 50 grants in it. 39 grants. I must have kind of removed some recently that I forgot about, but yeah, essentially you can just go through and you can add the whole collection to your cart, or you can basically just go through and pick which ones you want to donate to there. Now, of course, the Daily Gwei is on Gitcoin. It is the best way to support me if you want to. No obligation, of course, or anything like that, but people often ask me how they can support me, given that I don't do any ads on the Daily Gwei stuff, or I don't kind of charge for anything, and that's fine. But again, don't feel obligated to just donate if you want to, and the link for all of this will be in the YouTube description, of course. So yeah, definitely go check this out. I think that as an Ethereum kind of citizen, so to speak, it really is your duty to kind of get involved in these kind of funding rounds. This is essentially like what I guess the government does when it distributes tax to funding public goods, because in Ethereum, obviously, there's no tax, right? There's no percentage of the block reward that goes to some kind of address that acts as like a public goods funding mechanism. The best place we have for this is Gitcoin. And I spoke about kind of yesterday how there's a bunch of DAOs spinning up, and there's different DeFi projects starting up grants programs, and that's fine. But in terms of something that is definitely just for all types of public goods, not just in one area, Gitcoin is the best thing we have by far. And that Gitcoin is amazing. I mean, they've done so much good work over the years, and they've just kept improving. They obviously have a token now as well, which you can get involved with too, with their governance process and things like that. But generally, I think that if you're a user of Ethereum, you should fund the projects that you use and you don't pay for at the end of the day, especially if they don't have a token. If they don't have a token, you should be funding them, and if they basically just create this stuff and give it away for free to the community to use, I think those are the best projects to fund. So yeah, not saying that you should feel obligated, or it's like or you should be pressured into this, but I think as an Ethereum citizen, even giving something like 10 DAI, you can give 1 DAI to 10 different projects. If you do that, you don't have to give a lot. And because of the quadratic matching, if enough individual donors donate to the same project you did, your donation could end up going a lot further than 1 DAI. So definitely check this out. All of it will be linked in the YouTube description. But now I'm going to move on to the first rug of the last 24 hours, or DeFi exploit or something. There's another one from Alchemix, but I'm going to talk about Iron Finance first. Now, I want to kind of start off by saying that I think from everything that I've seen, Iron Finance was actually just a Ponzi, or not, maybe not a scam, but a Ponzi and a scam. The lines blurred there. But generally, I don't think that this was a serious project that had serious long-term potential. So I'll discuss what this project is and why it broke, essentially. For those who don't know, the native token of this project, Titan, went to zero, literally zero. and it went down like 100% or something like that, which was crazy to see in 24 hours. So the way this project kind of worked is that it's what's called an algorithmic stablecoin project, where you could mint this iron stablecoin that was, of course, pegged to $1 by backing it with 25% Titan token and 75% USDC. Now, when I think about that, I already red flags in my mind are like, okay, what's the point of this? Like, why do we need this? Anyway, I'll try not to give my kind of like opinion too much on this, but essentially, what ended up happening was that the Titan token price pumped up a lot, and I think it got a lot of attention as well because Mark Cuban wrote about it the other day in his blog post, so people started like aping into it. But essentially, the Titan token price went up to like $60. I think it was only $2 like a week ago or something. So it obviously went pretty crazy. And then what ended up happening is that a bunch of whales started cashing out at $60. Now, by doing this, the Iron stablecoin lost its peg. It went to 90 cents. Because, as I mentioned, Iron is backed by 25% Titan. Now, it lost its peg, it went to 90 cents, which represented a pretty lucrative arbitrage opportunity where you could essentially, redeem these kind of like Iron tokens for Titan and USDC, but like cheaper. Like if Iron's 90 cents and you can redeem 100 cents worth of Titan and USDC. So that's exactly what people did. And what ended up happening was that all the Titan that was redeemed was, of course, dumped into the market. And this resulted in an extremely negative feedback loop where the price of Titan just basically collapsed like a rock. Now, it did stabilize. The price of the Iron stablecoin, I think, went back to $1 for about 15 minutes during this whole debacle, but then it lost its peg again, and that negative feedback loop started again, and everything just went to zero, essentially. Now, the reason why this project can't fundamentally work in my eyes, and why I think it was just a Ponzi to begin with and wasn't a serious project, was because if you're backing something with a volatile token like Titan, right? Like with a brand new kind of volatile token that is obviously going to be extremely speculative at the start. It's going to be very hard to kind of keep its peg. The stablecoin keep its peg, and if there's no kind of like over collateralization here, because this is a partially collateralized system, then of course it's going to lose its peg. Now you might be thinking, well, what about Synthetix? It uses its token SNX to back up its whole system. If you remember to the early days of Synthetix, I'm pretty sure the collateralization ratio was like 1500% or something. So if the price of SNX actually fell very quickly, it didn't matter for SUSD and some of the other kind of assets on there because it was just so greatly over collateralized. Now that didn't happen with Iron Finance, so inevitably, it's all good on the way up. But like when Titan finally did dump, because whales decided, wow, I've made a shit ton of money off this thing, it's time to cash out. Everything just fell apart essentially, and this leads to the very negative kind of like feedback loop of basically if the Titan price is falling, then the Iron stablecoin can never go back to $1, and if the Iron stablecoin can't go back to $1, then the Titan price is going to keep falling because of that arbitrage opportunity where people are just going to keep selling into the market here. Now, of course, I think there was a pool too where there was an incentivized liquidity pool for Titan DAI and Titan Wrapped Matic, because this actually happened on Polygon. But what ended up happening was that people pulled that liquidity, of course, as it kept going down, because, when you're in a pool too and there's this death spiral here, you want to get out as fast as possible, or else you're going to end up just holding 100% Titan tokens since the price of the token went to zero. So that's basically the overview of what happened with this project. I think that itself calling itself an algorithmic stablecoin is just like, I think they were just kind of, I guess, riding on the hype of these things, because we've seen other ones like ESD and DSD and, Basis Cash, and there's a bunch of others out there that have all failed completely. And ironically, the one that got the most shit was Fei Protocol, and that one is actually doing fine right now and is actually been, just still building. It's a serious project. I should kind of like disclose here that I'm a seed investor in Fei Protocol, but I'm a seed investor for a reason. I actually think the project is incredibly interesting, and it's not like a Ponzi. It's actually, has builders behind it who actually care about it. Whereas these other things out there, they just, it's just very hard not to look at them and think that they're not a Ponzi when stuff like this happens, especially when there's no protections in place, there's no guarded launch, there's nothing. There's just like promotion of this thing. And then of course you have like the token price go up rapidly, and then pretty much like even if it started, even if the Iron Finance project team started with good intentions, and even if they started this project being like, what happens if we do this, like let's just try this experiment out, what inevitably ends up happening if the token price appreciates so much is that some teams, I'm not saying all of them, but some teams might just throw away their original kind of like ideals and just say, well, we just made a crap ton of money, let's just get out before this whole thing collapses. So I don't know the team, I don't know if this is actually what happened. I'm speculating, but I think it's fairly safe to say that this was a Ponzi at this point. Whether it wanted to be or not, it pretty much like ended up like a Ponzi does. It goes up really quickly. Some people at the top got out because they got in early, and then the rest of the people are left holding the bag. Classic kind of Ponzi mechanics here. And also, I mean, the mechanics itself are very Ponzi-like as well. So I guess like I'll leave it at that for now. I wrote more about this in the Daily Gwei newsletter. If you need like a bit of a deeper explanation on this, definitely go check that out. But I want to go over another project that kind of got exploited over the last 24 hours that handled this in a much better way than Iron Finance did. And actually, like, I mean, comparing Alchemix to Iron Finance is dumb to begin with, because Alchemix is an extremely serious project and one of the best projects in this space. And Iron Finance is Iron Finance. But essentially what happened with Alchemix and why the damage was actually very contained was that they actually had a guarded launch of their AL ETH product. So I've been going on about this for the past few days about AL ETH and how excited I've been for it. I'm still excited for it. Just because there was like a little bit of an exploit here doesn't mean I'm not excited for it. But they had a guarded launch where you could only mint 2,000 ETH worth of AL ETH. So if anything happened, then the most the shortfall would be about 2,000 ETH or something like that. The most the kind of vault could lose was about 2,000 ETH. Now, what ended up happening with this exploit, or I guess like this bug, was that basically people could redeem their I guess like ETH for 0 AL ETH essentially. I think that's my understanding of it. Maybe I should read it here. I think here we go. Sorry, individual users could withdraw all of their ETH, and so anyone, so can anyone else currently in the contract. So essentially, what ended up happening is that you could withdraw the ETH without bringing AL ETH to do so. So I guess like, that obviously wasn't intended. That wasn't meant to happen. But what actually happened was that there was no funds lost. What ended up happening was that everyone that had minted AL ETH basically got a windfall where they essentially were able to just redeem this ETH back, instead of kind of like bringing their AL ETH to the kind of pool to do this. And that's my understanding of it anyway. Now, I did want to kind of like go over why I liked the way this was handled. And the main reason is that the fact that it was a guarded launch, and they had that cap on it where you could only mint 2,000 ETH worth of AL ETH, but also the fact that the Alchemix team basically reacted to this within 15 minutes, and they paused the contracts. So they paused the AL ETH contracts. I'm not sure if they paused the AL DAI one as well. I believe maybe they did. But essentially, they made it so that, AL USD, not AL DAI, but they made it so that, the damage was limited and damage was contained. And, people were complaining to me the other day. They're like, oh my God, I want to get into this thing, but, they have this silly cap on it, and I wish they just removed the cap. Well, I mean, do you wish they removed the cap now? I probably not, right? So in these kind of things, in these kind of incidents, you really need to contextualize it and see that this stuff is bleeding edge. Like smart contracts, there's been plenty of improvements on smart contracts and encoding them up and getting audits done and things like that over the years. But that doesn't mean that they're immune to bugs. One little oversight in a contract can expose, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars to an exploit, which can be stolen, and then it's extremely hard to get that back. The way that Alchemix is actually going to make up for this shortfall in the system is that they're going to temporarily increase the fee revenue, the protocol fees, and that protocol fees are going to go into making the system whole to basically back this up here. And they're also going to be selling some of their DAI from their treasury for ETH, and I don't think they're going to be kind of like selling any ALCX tokens or minting any new ones or anything like that, like what Maker would do in an incident like this. But again, this just speaks to the fact that nothing in this industry is 100%, safe. No smart contract is ever going to be 100% safe. It's, the thing is, and this is kind of like, I guess, like the not the dangerous thing, maybe that's the wrong word, but the thing that people should kind of like have caution with is that just because something's been around for a while, just because a project's been around for a while, doesn't mean that it's immune to exploits. For example, Maker, maybe not Maker, but like because Maker switched to multi-collateral DAI, which is new code, but even still, maybe just Maker, Uniswap, Aave, all the top DeFi projects, and if we look at like something like UniV2, which has been around for a while, someone could come along and find an exploit in that at any time. Just because it worked for years and years and years doesn't mean that it's immune. And the earlier projects and the newer projects obviously have a much higher risk than the other projects that have been around for a while. And that's why I think that like the insurance products are going to do very well within DeFi as more of these kind of things happen. Something like Nexus Mutual, Insurace I've seen as well. There's a bunch of them out there right now. And getting cover will just become a normal thing because especially for institutions and bigger money players, a lot of them aren't going to just risk, especially if they're taking on clients' money. They're not just going to risk tens of millions of dollars on these kind of new things, but they do want to play with them. So they'll probably take out insurance. They'll probably like avoid the really new projects. A lot of them, I've seen the crypto native funds like to ape into new projects. I mean, I know that Alameda especially loves to just put money into everything, which to me is just like very cowboyish of them, but they're crypto native. They're fine taking that risk. I think it's all of their own money as well. So whatever, they can do what they want. But, these institutional and traditional finance people are not going to be putting in lots of money into these newer projects. They're going to start with projects like Aave and Maker and Uniswap and stuff like that. And then they're going to make their way down the risk curve, but it's going to take them a while to do that. So I guess like it's up to us as pioneers to battle test these things, to make sure that we don't lose, too much of the money in these systems when something does go wrong. And the way you do that is with a guarded launch, like with what Alchemix did. It's not like with Iron Finance. But again, comparing these two projects is silly because they are very, very different. One's a very serious Ethereum-based DeFi project. The other is pretty much a Ponzi. So yeah, but anyway, you can read this thread. It'll be linked in the YouTube description for a kind of like full post-mortem. There's also a forum kind of post here where which contains a full incident report, with a full root cause analysis and links to like relevant information and things like that. So definitely go check this out if you haven't already. So I missed this the other day, actually, from Polygon. I should have talked about this yesterday, but I only saw it after I did the refuel. But essentially, Polygon gets, I guess, a lot of flack for the fact that people call it a sidechain, right? The current Polygon offerings is the POS network, which is pretty much like what most people use, and that is a sidechain with its own validator set. It is not a roll-up or anything like that, and it gets criticism for that. But I've argued many, many times in the past that this is just missing the forest for the trees, because Polygon is not only that kind of like sidechain, it is a universe of scaling solutions. So what they've done here in this tweet thread and this kind of like blog post is that they've described kind of, I guess like what they kind of foresee, I guess the scaling ecosystem playing out as. So in this research piece, they go over rollups and kind of like what are the pros and cons to rollups, what are the pros and cons and differences between ZK rollups and optimistic rollups, and reaffirming their commitment to building these things and deploying them as time goes on. Now, I think that, this is really important for Polygon to do because, as I said, they get flack and they kind of like get a bad rap because people just think that Polygon's never going to release these kind of roll-up solutions. They're just going to stick to their kind of side chain. I mean, as an advisor to Polygon, I can assure you that there's no one more than the Polygon team that actually wants to get these solutions out there and that actually wants to kind of like get these rollups live and people building on them. Because at the end of the day, if we look at the Ethereum scalability landscape, Polygon is definitely the leader of the pack right now in terms of like users and transactions and all that sort of stuff. But as more and more of these solutions come online, the ecosystem is going to get very, very competitive. So Polygon as a project definitely needs to stay at the forefront of this technology, definitely needs to compete. So they're not going to be sitting on their laurels watching all these other projects launch this new technology and them just like keep what they have today. And in saying that, the Polygon sidechain, Polygon POS network is going to be around for a while. It's not going anywhere. I think it serves a critical purpose, and I think a lot of users are getting a lot of value out of it. But slowly over time, like ideally, I would like to see Polygon, the POS chain, turn into a rollup maybe, or I would ideally like to see a lot of the activity from the POS chain migrate to a rollup once the rollup ecosystems are more mature, once they're kind of more battle tested and more and kind of like the security and decentralization is where we want it to be, and that's always been Polygon's approach. You may have seen one of the co-founders, Mihailo, talk about this a lot on Twitter, where he says that the rollups are untested at this point. So, Polygon is sticking with what they know, and that's their network that's been live for quite a while now, and they're happy with that, and they're happy with the security of that. But obviously, the trade-off comes that it's not directly secured by the Ethereum network. It has less decentralization properties because of that. And you could argue less security because of that. But the point is and the other point that I should bring up here is that I love rollups. I love all the teams building these layer 2 solutions like Arbitrum and Optimism and everyone else. But as I've mentioned before, Arbitrum's going live for end users soon, but it's going to be centralized for quite a while. They're going to have admin keys. They're going to have the ability to pause the network if something goes wrong. They're going to have the ability to upgrade the network. They're going to have the ability to, if they wanted to, I'm not saying they would, but if they wanted to, they could censor transactions. They could probably steal user funds in some way. But that's the trade-off. Because of the fact that this isn't battle tested yet, they can't just release their roll-up technology onto mainnet and let it just run loose. Because in doing so, they expose themselves to the massive risk that something's wrong and, user funds get stolen or something goes catastrophically wrong with the roll-up solution. Because this is bleeding-edge technology. It has not been tested at scale yet. No roll-up has been tested at scale yet. I guess like the most active roll-up would probably be Starkware's one or Looprings. And Looprings has been around for a while, but they're ZK rollups. They are not optimistic rollups. So from that point of view, that's the reason why there's going to be another guarded launch, I guess you could call it, with Arbitrum. And I think Polygon is taking a cautious approach here and building in the background, getting ready to deploy these kind of solutions soon. But again, a lot of this stuff is not going to be at the end vision of where we want it to be in terms of like decentralization and security for quite a while, and that's okay because we need to make sure that it's secure before we kind of like throw it to the wolves, so to speak. We need to make sure it can defend itself against adversaries, and that's what a lot of networks suffer from, not just layer 2s but layer 1s as well. And that's why you'll see a lot of these layer 1 projects start off completely centralized from the beginning. Now a lot of them say that they'll decentralize over time. I actually think that not a lot of them will, and I actually think that Ethereum is lucky here because Ethereum did launch in a decentralized way where there was no guardrails on the Ethereum layer 1 network when it launched. There was a full traditional proof of work network that launched, and then obviously it was kind of centralized at the start because the ecosystem was very small. What the developers said was went, like what the core devs said went. But these days it's not like that at all, and there's still things that happen on the Ethereum layer 1 network. We recently saw a consensus bug with Open Ethereum. We've seen other things happen with infrastructure providers due to bugs. In December, Geth had a bug, and I think it was December or January or something like that. Geth had a bug which affected Infura, and there was a network split because of that. So these things still do happen, and having a way to recover from them is critically important. So the path of least resistance here is for these roll-up solutions to basically just have some training wheels on, some guarded launches going, and then over time decentralize it. And I do believe the roll-up solutions will decentralize over time, because if they don't, they will lose to the ones that do. Because when you think about it, they aren't their own layer 1 ecosystem. They are inheriting Ethereum's community and Ethereum's ecosystem. So the Ethereum community is not going to stand for a centralized layer 2 forever. If a layer 2 or a rollup has said that they're going to decentralize over time and they're not doing that, then users are going to call that out and they're going to switch to other solutions. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. Just good to see Polygon reaffirming their stance here on rollups, and I recommend reading this piece. It's got a lot of good information in it as well. So speaking of layer 2s, Diversify is now supported by Zappa. So this is the first layer 2 Validium implementation that Zappa is supporting. Now, for those who don't know, Validium is a technology created by Starkware. It's not technically a ZK rollup. It is basically a way to, I guess, achieve scalability without putting data on layer 1. So the way the Validium construction works, from my understanding, is that, I should explain how like the normal rollups work, where there's two parts to a transaction. There's the data and there's the computation of that kind of like data. So what ends up happening is that the data goes onto layer 1, but the computation is done on layer 2 or off chain, for example, so that you can get more scalability that way. Now with Validium, only the bare minimum is put on layer 1. So what ends up happening is that in a Validium construction, there's a data availability committee that sits off-chain, which basically houses the data and makes sure it's available and all this sort of stuff. And then the computation is still done off-chain, but then just like a proof that that data exists and the computation was done is posted to Ethereum rather than the data being posted to Ethereum. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I got it right. But this comes with less security guarantees than a full kind of roll up, but it gives you more scalability. But anyway, I wanted to explain the kind of like differences there, but it's really cool to see that Diversify is supported by Zapper here. Two of my favorite projects in the ecosystem, Zapper and Diversify, and I'm sure a lot of you are using the Zappify dashboard. So if you are on the Diversify layer 2 kind of ecosystem here, this will be interesting to use. So I'll link this in the YouTube description. You can check out the blog post for more details. So Vitalik posted some really big brain stuff over the last 24 hours. He wrote up three notes, blog posts you could call them. One on Verkle trees, one on state expiry, and one on a state expiry and statelessness roadmap here. So, and then Eric kind of said, I'm going to act like I understand this. And I was the same when I was reading this. I was like, okay, yes, I understood some of those words. But Tim Baiko, one of the core devs from Ethereum, basically put together this TLDR thread, which is basically just one tweet, essentially, where he said, Verkle trees are flatter than Merkle Patricia trees, which means smaller witness sizes. State expiry means full nodes only store the past 2 periods of access state, where one period is equal to about 1 year. To roll out, freeze out the Merkle Patricia trees, which is what Ethereum uses today, call it period 0, and new writes go into the new Verkle tree architecture. Now, again, you're probably reading this and being like, what is this? Like, what is he talking about? Essentially, what this means is that you can basically expire some of the state after a year, which means that you basically archive the state and you just keep the state kind of like outside of, from my understanding, you would keep the state kind of like expired until someone comes along and says, here's proof that I want to access this state. It's kind of like archiving something, essentially, where you basically, you don't need access to it now, but in the future and sometime you'll be able to access it. And the way you access it is by bringing this kind of like witness. Now, as a tangible example here, I think Tim put a tangible example in reply to someone. Maybe it's in the reply here. So yeah, this person Clouted asked the question. Would love some clarification here. So people holding ETH in a wallet for 5 years won't be able to easily initiate a transfer. And then Tim says, yes, you'll just need a witness for your account state. Wallets and other third parties should be able to provide this, and ideally clients will give you a way to generate it before you log off for 5 years. So if this does actually go through and happen, I imagine like wallets and all kind of wallet providers and things like that will just generate the witness for you, even if you don't plan to go offline for a while. And then when you come back and you want to make, you want to maybe withdraw your ETH from your account or send that ETH to an exchange or something because you want to cash out because ETH 100K or whatever, you will just present a witness, and a witness is basically just like a proof on chain that you own this piece of state and that you need access to this, so the chain will give you access to it. So hopefully that explains it. There was also another really good thread from Justin LaRue, which I have retweeted, and I'll just find it here because I'm going to link this in the newsletter as well, where he says he's going to use his middle curve brain to attempt a high-level TLDR of these posts. Now, Justin's thread goes into more detail about what exactly the Ethereum state is, what the difference is between Patricia trees and Merkle trees and Verkle trees and all this sort of stuff, and he uses some illustrative examples here. So I highly recommend going and giving this thread a read. I really enjoyed it and really thought it was a great thread. And I'll link this in the YouTube description for you to check out. You can also read Vitalik's blog posts, but again, if you don't understand, the high-level basics here, you're probably not going to understand what he's talking about in his blog posts. But generally, I actually think that Vitalik has a really good way of explaining technical topics to people that, may not be technical. So still, I recommend going and reading these posts. I read them. As I said, I didn't understand everything, but I mean, I still understood a lot of it, and Vitalik's writing is just like very easy to read as well. So yeah, go check this out if you haven't yet. So Instadapp's governance token is now live, the INST token. Now, this was airdropped to a bunch of different accounts. I think 55% was airdropped. Not 55%. I think there was 10 million of the tokens, which I believe is 10 million of the tokens, are immediately available to claim by 312,000 users that manage their DeFi positions on Maker, Compound, or Aave on mainnet. Now, the problem with this airdrop, from what I've seen, is that people are calling it the worst airdrop ever because it was extremely badly distributed. So I think what ended up happening was that they didn't actually distribute it to users of Instadapp from the last kind of couple years. They only distributed it to users from the last month or so, I think. And then the rest of the airdrop is going to people that I think is some kind of like liquidity mining program where it'll be distributed over time if you use the Instadapp portal to essentially kind of like manage your positions and things like that. But yeah, you can see the comments on this thread here. People saying that the airdrop was like, basically nothing. And, I've used Instadapp for years, but I didn't get anything from this. And yeah, I mean, people just kind of like believe this is like the worst airdrop in history. Now, that's strong language. I don't know if it's the worst airdrop in history or whatever. I've been a big fan of the Instadapp team and their product for a while here. But yeah, I think that their airdrop could have been done much better, and it should be done retroactively. If you've been a project that's been around for a while and you haven't had a token, say you've been around for like 2 years, which is what Instadapp did, then you definitely should be doing a retroactive airdrop because you have a community that has been, around for quite a while, and that community essentially, maybe people say it's entitled to expect something, but you shouldn't just anger your existing community by making this really crappy kind of like non-retroactive airdrop here. So yeah, I'm not gonna kind of give any more opinions on that. I haven't dived too deep into this. I just saw some chatter about it. I checked mine. I don't think I got any INST tokens, or maybe a little bit of it, but I used that like a while ago now. I haven't used that recently, so to speak. So yeah, go check out if you've got a bunch of INST tokens here. You could definitely check out this blog post for a link and details on how to claim. So finally here, Pete Kim from Coinbase announced that USDC has gone live on Arbitrum. So you can go to the Arbitrum Block Explorer here and see that essentially there's a transaction here with USDC on here. This is so cool. I mean, as I've been saying, different projects are launching on Arbitrum and during this dev mainnet, and then it's going to be available to end users very soon. So it's good to see that USDC is on Arbitrum. It's already on Polygon. It already has a $2.3 billion market cap on Polygon too. And I think the same is going to happen with Arbitrum. And, this speaks to, I think, a lot about what people have been saying about, everything's going to get fragmented and there's going to be liquidity everywhere because of these layer 2s and other scalability solutions. And I've talked about this before, but I don't think this is a big deal at all. I really don't. There's bridge solutions coming. There's I've spoken about this so much. Connext, Hot Protocol, Salar Network, they're coming and they're live. Some of them are live already. And I think that this is all just going to be abstracted away. Stop missing the forest for the trees is my general advice on this sort of stuff. This is going to get solved. If there's a problem that people consider critical, they're going to solve it. And I have never come across in my time in this industry, problems that couldn't be solved by smart engineers and smart researchers. So always bet on them. Always bet on the researchers and developers and engineers and all that sort of stuff. I guess have a bit of a more longer-term outlook here on these things. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because I've spoken about that a lot in the past. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching today. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.